because of the great impact that they did have on my life. Growing up, the parents always seemed to drop you off. The grandparents, I was dropped off by frequently. And my grandfather had in the backyard a big mud pit. We used to let him play in. And I'd find worms there all the time. It was just the best thing. And I remember my grandfather coming out one day, and it's just as I was pulling this really long worm.
I heard it's mine.
As I was pulling this very long worm out of the ground. And I started to put it back, and he said, "You're never going to get it back in the ground." And I said, "Yes, I will." I said, "I'll bet you $5 I will."
Be quiet.
And he said, "Okay, you're on." So I went in the house, got Grandma's hairspray, came back outside, grabbed that worm, sprayed it up, sprayed it down, stiff as a board, stuck him straight back in the ground. My grandfather looked at me, shook his head, pulled out his wallet, gave me $5, took the canvas hairspray, and went back into the house. Short time later, he came back outside and gave me another $5 bill. I said, "Grandpa, what are you doing? You already paid me." He said, "No, this is from your grandmother." And, as grandparents age, certain things happen. And my grandfather ended up in a nursing home for a short period of time. He had some crazy tales to tell. He said, "Dad," he said, "I was right across from this basically retired police officer." Well, he thought he was a police officer. But there was this elderly woman who would come by in a wheelchair every day, just revving her wheelchair. Big scar sounds, rolling around. And he said, and I was watching one day, and here she came by. And all of a sudden he jumped out and he said, "Pardon me, ma'am, you were speeding. I need to see your license." So she looked into her purse, she pulled out a candy wrapper, gave it to him, he looked it over, and said, "Everything seems to be appropriate. Carry on." So she made a couple more tours. Again, he jumped out at her. He said, "Man, you crossed the median back there. You did not signal. I'm going to see your registration." So she reached in, she grabbed the prescription, pulled it out, gave it to him. "Okay, I'm letting you know, this is your last warning though." So again, she's making tours around. All of a sudden, the guy jumps out, stark naked with an erection. And she slammed to a stop and she said, "Oh no, not the breathalyzer again." And my grandfather went in for an appendectomy not too long ago. When I went in to visit him, you always wonder how hospitals treat patients. And I said, "Okay, Grandpa, how's everything going?" "Oh, it's going really well." "How's cuisine?" "The food couldn't be better." "Staff?" "Oh," he said, "they're very attentive." And he said, and every night, he said, "I get 9 hours of uninterrupted sleep. I haven't had that in so long." He said, "It's just the best thing." And I said, 9 hours of sleep? I said, "How do you do that?" He said, "Well, each night, around 10 o'clock, they come, they give you a big glass of cocoa and then Viagra." I'm thinking, okay, cocoa, Viagra. So as I was leaving, I stopped by the nurse's station and I said, "Okay, my grandfather says in order to get him to sleep, you give him cocoa and Viagra." I said, "What's the Viagra?" And she said, "Well, the cocoa is what puts him to sleep. The Viagra keeps him from rolling out of bed." And when Grandpa was in the hospital this last time, Grandma decided, well, a couple of days had passed, she was getting a little lonely, so she went to the pet store. And she was going up and down the aisles, figured, well, I'll find something that'll maybe keep me company. And nothing really caught her fancy. She passed this really decrepit-looking frog in a battered cage on a back shelf. And the frog whispered out, "Buy me, you won't regret it." And she looked at the frog and said, "Come on, it's $1, $1. So she went up to the front, put the dollar on the counter, walked out with the frog out in her car and started home. Partway home, frog whispers again, "Kiss me, you won't regret it." She thinks it's rather foolish, but no, why not? Takes the frog out of the cage, gives him a big kiss. All of a sudden, poof, this frog turns into a gorgeous, handsome, sexy young prince. And he's there and he looks lovingly in her eyes. And he leans across the car seat and he gives her a big kiss back. And you know what my grandmother turned into? The first hotel she could find. And I guess that's the one thing as you do get older, you find that the people who once gave you advice come back to you for advice. And not too long ago, my grandmother did come back to me for advice, and she said, you know, I'd really love to spruce up our love life again. It just hasn't been the same for so many years. And hearing of a certain drug I knew was quite prevalent on the market, I said, well, how about Viagra? And she said, oh, no. Your grandfather, he hates pills, and I don't think I could give it to him. I said, well, why don't you simply ground it up, put it in his morning coffee, and see what happens? So she said she would, and a week later I called her, and I said, okay, how'd everything go? You know, you and grandfather, everything picked up? She said, absolutely. She said, things couldn't be better. She said, but, I don't know, in all actuality, I think something terrible has happened. I said, well, what could possibly have happened? You said everything was going so well. And she said, I did like you said, I got the Viagra. We had breakfast in the morning, I had ground it up, I put it into his coffee. And all of a sudden, it started to take effect on him. And he looked at me from across the table, he lunged across the table, he ripped off my clothes, and we had the most passionate love we have had in 25 years. And I said, how could you possibly complain about that? And she said, I'm not. I'd love to do it again tomorrow morning, but I can't go back to that Denny's. There was a man. He had the Adonis body. He had the gold bronze tan. Everywhere except one certain body part. And so he decided the only way that he could possibly tan that part was to go to the beach, bury himself in sand, except for that one lone body part sticking up out of the sand. And so he did. Fell asleep. And he woke, hearing an old lady standing over him. And she was lamenting. He could hear her crying. He opened his eyes and looked up, and there were tears flowing down his cheeks. And she said, when I was 20, I was curious about it. When I was 30, I enjoyed it. When I was 40, I asked for it. When I was 50, I paid for it. When I was 60, I prayed for it. When I was 70, I forgot about it. Now that I'm 80, the damn things are growing wild and I'm too old to squat.